So our speakers tonight are Damon Macklin from Tally and Chris Miles from Digital Directories. So I'm going to hand you over to Damon Macklin first, who will introduce his talk and kickstart us off for the evening. Over to you, Damon.
Nice, thanks, Alex. Can you see my screen okay?
I can, perfect.
Let's get rid of that. And is it moving?
It is, yeah, we're good to go.
Good, okay. Yeah, thanks, Alex. So, hi everyone, my name is Damon. I head up product at Tally, as Alex said. Just a bit of background on Tally. Tally is both a challenger bank and a challenger currency. Our currency, Tally, is tied to the physical ownership of actual gold, unlike fiat currencies, i.e. pounds, dollars, yen, euros. Tally is an asset-based currency. And as you'll all probably be aware, gold is a very good store of value. Like many other businesses, we are a very small team and we consume third-party APIs and render banking functionality in the front end of our app. Well, I'm going to talk to you today. I was going to talk to you about designing a better form of money, but unfortunately, I haven't managed to produce what I was going to present about. But I'm going to talk to you today about getting buy-in from stakeholders, and these are kind of my 7 mantras. So, firstly, how do we think we define a stakeholder? So, a stakeholder is anyone who has an interest in the product, whether it be the user directly or a CEO. So how many of you know your stakeholders personally? Do you know your stakeholder's birthday, for instance? I mean, it's a weird one. So why is this important? So getting close and personal to your stakeholders. As a product manager, this is super important. You don't want to get too close, but you want to reduce barriers. You want to increase transparency, build your relationships, try and get some informal conversation going, and then feel confident pitching ideas. So yeah, my number 1 tip is just ask. Second one is too many cooks. As a product owner or product manager, you're going to have to try and avoid design by committee. It's easier said than done, but it's super important. You need to identify the right people that need to be in the room, and get those people involved, and try and identify those that don't need to be involved, and make sure that they know why they don't need to be involved. Having too many cooks can make it too subjective. It can make it uninformed, and you have to try to limit the number of people being involved. So identifying the right people is my tip on that. My next one is do your research. This is pretty important. I mean, it's probably the most important thing, really. Getting out and speaking to users, gathering their requirements, and finding out the stakeholders' objectives. It gives you an objective rationale. It's so important to be able to speak to your users, and a lot of us don't do it as often as we should, really. And I often find myself having to create myself events in my diary or in my calendar, just so I know I'm regularly doing it. Because sometimes it can go by the wayside. Other priorities kick in and you just forget about doing it. Speaking to users is the single most important thing. Another thing that I try to do is I try to make all new joiners speak to users and do at least a week with customer service at Tally. And this is purely because if you are living and breathing and having to answer questions with users, then you're going to get a really good understanding of what users need. So yeah, be ready to be questioned. Next, clear rationale. So you need to be able to present to your stakeholder the most obvious and clear rationale for why you did it. You need to be able to evidence-base that. So user research, user feedback. I've put evidence-based again because it's obviously very important. And it helps you to get on the same page. Coming to your stakeholder with rhymes and reasons why you haven't done something or why you intend to not do something is going to always help you in being able to describe where you're headed and to be able to pitch either an idea or pitch a solution. It's super important because, especially when it's got user research behind it or is evidence-based, because what it will do is it will slam the hypotheses that come up. And if you have already tested those and you can evidence that, then you're going to be in a far better place. Of course, there's always going to be hypotheses that are built out of that as well, where a stakeholder turns around and says, that's interesting, but none of your evidence has any of the hypotheses such as, and you've got to be willing to go out and test those hypotheses, or come back with some kind of rationale as to why you may not have tested that. So yeah, my mantra there is give them the reasons. Next is confidence. So as product people, we are salespeople. We are having to be able to help our customers and our users to enjoy and use the product that we build. But internally with our stakeholders, we're salespeople. It's really important that we are able to speak confidently about what it is that we're delivering. The other thing as well is that I think this goes by the wayside, but you have a worth. I've seen way too many product people be slammed in meetings that more than I'd care for, to be honest. And I think it's all about making sure that you know that you have a worth and that confidence. I think that's super important. That you have skills that should be listened to, and you should be presenting loud and proud. Often I think this gets overlooked a lot of the time in product generally. So yeah, tip is to take the stage. So yeah, don't bullshit. You get found out every time. It's going back to that clear rationale piece. A little bit of an overlap there. You need to be able to come to the party with a clear rationale, but you need to be able to also not bullshit. If someone says to you, oh, that's interesting, but how do you know that? If you don't have the evidence, then be honest. You need to be able to turn around and say, actually, do you know what? That's a very good point. We don't have any evidence of that. In fact, we'll probably go out and test that theory. That's really important in those moments. Bullshitting is see-through and obvious, as we all know. You look stupid, and what happens if it all goes wrong? It's easily done when you're struggling in an argument, which does happen, albeit friendly, but it does happen when a stakeholder is suggesting that you might not have gone down a certain path. It's very easy to come back and say, oh, no, we definitely did, when actually maybe you didn't. So yeah, never ever lie. Next is listening. So listening is an interesting one. We all know about active listening. It is a difficult skill, especially when you're working with stakeholders, because sometimes there is just so much noise around the periphery. And maybe you've been round the block so many times with this particular design of a product or this particular execution of a product, or plugging in this solution and working with the technical team. So active listening and really understanding and really listening to stakeholders is something that is actually incredibly difficult to do, and something that I continually try to grapple with and try to master. And I've even got on courses for that as well, for active listening, purely because I think it's very easy to sweep things under the carpet and just be like, no, it's fine, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, or just paying lip service to it. Stakeholders want acknowledgement. They want to know at the end of the day that you are taking the problem seriously and that you are executing that in the right way. It might be the right way that they want, but they want to know that you have managed to think through the problem and provided with a solution that's well-rounded. And And the other major reason is that you might actually hear good ideas. I think this whole point around stakeholders is born out of frustration with stakeholders. Certainly frustration that I've had over the years, from junior all the way through to where I am now. And it's mostly about ensuring that they feel acknowledged, that they know that you are going through the process and finding those solutions. And the point is that you do hear good ideas, and dismissing stakeholders is not the way to do it. So yeah, my tip is let people ideate and then capture it. Next is honesty. So don't be afraid to disagree. You need to be able to say to someone, do you know what? No, I really don't agree with what you're saying. And you need to be able to rationalize that. You need to be able to keep it objective, and you need to be able to, provide evidence of that in the same way you do with your rationale. It can feel awkward, and it needs to be non-personal. It needs to be very clear that this is just a very honest opinion on this, but it's not what I think of you. It's what I think of this idea or whatever it might be. And of course, it might annoy. This is often the case, and it's about trying to make sure that these things don't blow out of proportion. So yeah, don't be afraid to say I don't know, because a lot of the time, and this is a bit like the don't bullshit, but a lot of the time we don't have all the answers as product managers. We just don't, and we turn to our tech team, or we turn to our UX guys, or whoever it might be that's working on the product, and look to them for the answers, or they don't have the answers. And again, we have to go out and research and come back with justified rationale. So yeah, own your truth is my tip there. So to recap, my 7 mantras are: get close and personal, don't have too many cooks, do your research, have a clear rationale, be confident, don't bullshit, listen, and be honest. And I've just realized that my 7 mantras is in fact 8. It shows how old this presentation is. So yeah, that's it from me. Thanks for listening. My name is Damon Macklin, Head of Product at Tally. Go ahead and check us out. Thanks so much.
Damon, thank you very much for that. I'll be sure to make sure it's titled 8 Mantras when we publicise it after.
Do that in future, yeah.
Thought it was great, mate. Thanks very much. So without further ado, going to hand you over to Chris Miles. As I say, we'll do questions at the end, but Chris, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Let me just share my screen. And while I do that, I'd like to say a lot of that resonated with me as well, Damon, and particularly the spending time on research. I have an hour set aside in my diary every single day to do research, but I'm not religious with actually using that time properly. So that's something I always try and work on. So can you see my screen, Alex?
We can perfectly. It's in presentation mode as well. All good.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk to you guys today about the difference between and similarities between product and project management, and whether they can work together or whether they should be kept separate. I've chosen this topic because I've seen it discussed quite a few times in blogs, forums, events, and actually had conversations face to face in the workplace. And I don't feel it's ever truly been resolved. And I thought with my experience, I'd be able to give quite an objective view of this question. Interestingly, Damon's point about don't bullshit and be evidence-based. Well, this is going to be my perspective, and given that it's going to be quite a short presentation, I'm not going to go into detail of the examples that have led me to this opinion, but I'm happy to talk about them offline. My metrics are up here. Let's just say that. So before I dig into the content, I will give a bit of an overview about who I work for. So I'm a senior product manager at a company called Digital Directories, and we have a range of brands that are currently centered around people solving legal issues online. So we're both B2C, as we help customers that have legal issues, but we're B2B as well, because we have lawyers that sign up to use our platform, pay an annual subscription fee, and we help connect them with users. The reason we're called Digital Directories is we want to expand into different territories and different markets going forward. We've got 3 websites across 4 countries. So Credible is with a Q, is our UK website, which launched in October. We've got Justify in France and Belgium, and we've got Legale Perme in Italy. And then the bottom 2, Jurifiab and Matrice, are blogs, and actually up to 40% of our traffic comes through those blogs. So that content is absolutely huge for us and our business. We've got about 4,000 lawyers across the platforms at the moment because UK and Italy are just growing. We've got offices in London, Paris, and Milan. The Belgian team is run out of Paris as well, and the central tech and product team and leadership is all based in London, which is where I work out of. In terms of myself, so I started my career at IBM on a consulting graduate scheme there. I worked primarily in sort of large IT implementation projects, mostly as a business analyst or project manager, including doing the PMO, so project management office role, which people in consulting tend to do early in their career, which really underpins a lot of that you work on in the future. And then I moved over to NTT Data, where I worked in their telco media consulting division. I started off there doing a continuation of those roles, so BA, project manager roles, some hybrids. But then I started to move more into the strategy space, working specifically in digital customer experience, more product owner roles and product manager roles. And I took both the telco and the digital product manager experience into my first job on client side or industry side, as we call it in consulting, where I worked as a senior product manager at BT, looking at the logged in service area, which is called My BT. And then last summer, I then moved to digital directories that I've just talked to you about, where my title is the same as it was at BT, but it's a very different role. My job is to create a product function and enable the business to be more product led. So moving from an output focused to an outcome focused, and getting the owner, the CEO, and the other senior stakeholders bought into that approach and build a team around it. So hopefully that tells you a little bit about who I work for and my experience. I have done plenty of project manager roles and product manager roles, which I think puts me in quite a good place to compare and contrast the two. So one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk about this topic is I was doing a search for new roles this time last year, and I was searching product manager, senior product manager, lead product manager, whatever, in London. And I was getting so frustrated that so many of the roles I was seeing were actually project manager roles. And this is on LinkedIn, you know, the world's largest career networking site and a huge portal for people to look for jobs. And I decided to count them. And 35% of the results I got for one of my searches were actually project manager roles. And then if I use the function to not show project manager roles, which LinkedIn allows you to do, it was removing all the product manager roles as well. So if LinkedIn can't distinguish between the two, what hope have the rest of us got? So I've seen quite a few blogs and publications talk about project and product management as two sides of the same coin. And I wanted to dig into that search and see if that was the case. Sorry, my mouse has just gone a bit crazy there. So I wanted to explore, are they Batman and Robin? You know, do they work together to solve problems and make the world a better place, product and project? Or are they Marvel and DC, right? Do they operate in two completely separate universes? To answer this question, I've come up with 6 different categories that I will explain very briefly where project sits in terms of that category and where product sits as well. And again, interest of time, I will move through them quite quickly, but I'm happy to answer more detailed questions about them at the end. So the first category I defined was methodology. So projects typically are delivered in a waterfall manner. That's absolutely my experience and the experience of many people I've spoken to about this. This means that you define what you want to do, you gather the requirements, you build it, you test it, and then you put it live. Sorry, design, build, test, and then put it live. Product is synonymous with Agile as far as I'm concerned. So buying into the principles of the Agile Manifesto and all the elements within that. From a focus perspective, now what I mean by this is a project has to deliver the output of the deliverable that was agreed. So if it's a project to build a house, that's the output, right? Building the house. If you looked at that from a product standpoint, it's more the outcome of building that house. So is the outcome improved standard of living for the people that will then be moving into it? Is it a higher quality of life? Is it something completely different? Is it more efficient use of fuel because this house has solar panels or whatever. The point is that product focuses on the outcome that comes from that thing, not the thing itself. Projects are fixed. I've never worked on a project that's been exactly to time, but projects are a finite period of time. And product is synonymous with agile and therefore synonymous with being continuous and infinite. The attitude that a project manager should have is that they are finding the best solution. So the role of a project team, I knew I was going to do that at least once, mix up those two. The role of a project team is to find the best solution to deliver the output that they've agreed is the goal. Whereas a product team, it's all about iterative and continuous improvement and making something better than it was before. So in Agile, the best test of success is working software. In a project, that's not true, because if you're delivering through a waterfall methodology, you're not going to see that working software until the end. So it's a different approach. In terms of the team, people will be allocated to a project for a finite period of time to deliver that output, which is the best solution in a waterfall manner. Product should be pre-funded. You should have the skills and resources you need to continuously test and learn and deliver outcomes in an agile manner. So that includes developers, testers, designers, a product manager. If you're working in Scrum, it'd be a Scrum Master as well. And the last one is scope. So projects have fixed scope, right? Again, much like the time period, they always change in reality, but there's a very robust and fixed process around how they are changed using change requests, which anyone that's worked on major projects probably strikes fear into you, as it does me, hearing about CRs and waking up thinking about them in the middle of the night. Product is fluid. You don't know what you're doing from month to month. And this, for me, working in the product as a product manager in project mentality environments, this is the single hardest thing to get across, that you do not know what you will be doing X months or years into the future, because how could you possibly know? Because you don't know how your customers will react to the thing you're currently working on. So based on that whistle-stop tour of those 6 categories, I strongly believe that they are not Batman and Robin working together, that they are 2 separate universes and require different ways of thinking and a different setup. That's the theory, but in reality, you do see a lot of companies trying to bridge this gap and make them work together. And I'll come on to why I think that is at the end. So just something a little bit corny here, right? There's only 2 letters difference between these 2 roles. A project manager, the J is that they judge timelines to determine the plan and then ensure delivery of it. It's all about the plan. And it's an incredibly hard job to create that plan and then make people deliver to it. And they enable the team through managing the risks, the issues, the assumptions and dependencies. You flip the I and the A around there and you've got your RAID log, which project managers spend a lot of time using. On the product side though, if you look a little bit upstream from where a project manager would get involved in their world, they're determining the vision. So why are we doing this? The strategy, what are we doing? And then the roadmap, how are we going to do that? And then they need to understand the customer, the company and the competition inside out, which is to a huge level of depth, which is not required from a project manager. So that's why I oversensitive mouse again. So the key takeaway I want to put here is, if you're in a leadership position, think about how you want your business or your team to operate. And if you're in just a team member role and you're considering how you want your career to go, I'm not saying product is better than project or project is better than product. What I am saying is think about where your role sits and curate it and develop it to be what you want to work in the future. Because I've seen so many roles out there where quite simply the name of a business analyst, the job description hasn't changed and they've just changed the title to product manager. And there's a lot of that out there. So try and create and amend your role to suit what your professional development needs are. I've never had a role where I haven't been able to alter it based on what my development needs are. You just have to have a willingness to do it. I think the reason this is so prevalent, having both these roles and trying to make them work in harmony, is there's a reluctance for people to move to the product thinking approach. And I highly recommend looking up Kyle Evans' project thinking versus product thinking article on Medium, and I can send it around if people are interested. But people are happy with what they know. And the waterfall Prince 2 style project approach is what people in leadership positions now have grown up with in a career sense. And they're too nervous to move away to something that's completely alien to them. So they try and amalgamate the two. that's all I was going to go through right now. As I say, there will be questions in a minute, but feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn, follow me, add me. And also I've just started posting blogs on Medium, and I posted my first blog at the end of last week, which is actually about this very topic. So I'd love it if you guys can tell me what you think and give me feedback on that. So I guess back over to you, Alex, for any questions.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good talk. I think many on here, I can imagine many are a big fan of your sort of nods to the DC and Marvel. I'm certainly a big fan, so really enjoyed that. So yeah, had a few questions come in. So Damon, I'll go to you first. You were actually asked a relatively similar one last week when you spoke at our Agile London event, but I'll ask it again because we've got a different audience. Could you give us a bit more detail about Tally, how it works, and if, in your opinion, or why, in your opinion, it's safer to have our money in Tally than in a savings account?
Yeah, sure. I mean, great question. Probably got like a plethora of answers to go with that. But in simple terms, holding your money in pounds or in fiat currency is essentially a not particularly safe way. And we all think our money's safe. We all think it's fine sitting in the bank account. But the fact of the matter is that fiat currencies devalue by design. And what I mean by that is that the way the system works is that I own pounds. I stash £1,000 in my bank account. That £1,000 can buy me X. Well, in 3 months' time, that £1,000 can only buy me part of X. It can't still buy me X. It devalues over time. And the way that's offset is with quantitative easing and with inflation. The way that gold works is that gold holds its value over a period of time, unlike fiat currencies. So why is it? That's the answer to why it's better. Why is it safer? Well, okay, so you probably all know that your money is protected by the FSCS, the Financial Compensation Services Scheme. You probably all know that, and that you are protected up to the value of £85,000, which to most of us is not really going to make a great deal of difference. That being said, that's never been tested. We've never been in a situation where that's had to be tested as an insurance policy, let's say, for the banks. What we have at Tally is we have your money protected to 99% of the value of that money. And that money is something physical. It is gold itself, and it is in the legal title of every single user of Tally. Anyone who has any Tally with us, then they own the legal title. And so if they wanted to call on that and the value of that, they could easily do so. If we went through a financial crash tomorrow like we did with 08, you'd sooner be better off having your money in Tally than you would be in pounds. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Chris, what advice would you give to project managers wanting to make the switch to product management?
I think that's a really good question. There's a lot of skills that overlap as well, which is the good thing. A lot of the core skills that project managers have are also ones that product managers have. So organization, being structured, being logical, being able to build relationships with stakeholders are all crucial. I think the best thing to do is look up some articles and some job descriptions of what a product manager is. And I'm happy to share if that person wants to get in touch with me afterwards, and map yourself where you think you excel and need development in those areas, and then start to develop them offline in your own time, and then start your journey in product. There's plenty of junior product manager roles out there, or product manager roles where you can get off in that journey. So I certainly think look at what a description of the role is, look at where you're strong and not so strong, and then start to develop your skills.
Okay, thank you. To Damon, your talk was around stakeholders and managing them. Have you ever clashed with a stakeholder where they stayed very firm on their points and you disagreed with them? So I'm trying to make sense of this. It's a little not written so clearly. So have you, I guess I'll reword it. Have you ever been in a situation where you've clashed with a stakeholder who stands firm on their point you stand firm on yours and you've disagreed. How did you handle the difficult situation there?
Yeah, so I think it's really easy, and I think Chris will probably want to input into this as well. But I think it's really, really basic. I talk about stakeholders in two forms. You've got stakeholders internally, and also stakeholders externally, which is your users, right, and customers. We're all familiar with the phrase "the customer's always right." I think the actual phrase that comes into the realm of product is "the customers are always right." And that being the point, you can lose an argument to a stakeholder who gazumps you. It might be your CEO, founder. It doesn't matter who it might be. It might be someone senior. It might be someone junior. It doesn't necessarily matter. Your winning argument really is what does the user need, and it always comes back to that: the user or the customer. What do they need? And if what they need, and you have the evidence to back that, to say that they need X, Y, and Z, and someone is entirely disagreeing with you, then you have to be very clear. And so I have been in this circumstance a few times, and it really comes down to, what does the business want? Well, the business wants customers to be happy, because like most businesses, if the customer's happy, then the business is making money. And if the business is making money, then everyone's happy, everyone's getting paid and going home at the end of the day. If the customer is unhappy and we are directly doing something that is going to make customers unhappy, then that is fine, Mr. Stakeholder or Mrs. Stakeholder or Miss Stakeholder. But who are you going to go and explain that to? Are you going to go and explain that to the CEO, who's not going to be particularly happy that we're doing something that's completely against what customers want? So look, it's inevitable that you clash with people. It's inevitable you clash on opinion. But as I was saying earlier, it all really comes back to your evidence base. It always comes back to clear rationale. And if you can say, I've spoken to X number of users and actually all of them completely disagree with your point, then who are we building this for? Are we building it for the stakeholder internally, or are we building it for our external stakeholder, which is our customer?
Yeah, I think.
Thank you, Chris. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I will actually. Yeah, I think it's a good one. And as product managers, we can feel sometimes like we have to be everybody's friend, because you're supposed to collaborate, and you always feel like you maybe should say no very, very nicely, but sometimes you can't. I think getting the stakeholder to articulate what problem it is they're trying to solve, what their idea is, and then what metric, they might not understand metrics, but what lever they're trying to pull, what benefit is it going to have, is useful. So even if you have a little form that they fill out, or just say, put it in an email to me and explain. The other thing is, if you have the ability to A/B test, and it's something fairly simple, because you might know more than they do about the customer. It's highly likely that you do, but also you get things wrong as well. So if you can do it quickly, A/B test it, make a little change, test it. They might be right, you might be right. It doesn't actually matter, because you'll do whatever's right for the customer. And then the more coercive approach is, you can add anything to your backlog, right? And if it's something they won't back down on, you can add it to your backlog. And then you can say to them, look, this is another thing I could do for you. And there's this idea. Are you telling me that this idea you've just come up with is more important than that thing you previously spoke to me about? And more often than not, they'll start then to be able to put it into perspective in what they're asking for. So I think a combination of those three things and what Damon said is how you deal with stakeholders in that instance.
Thank you. Chris, to you, what are the key things to consider when, as an agile or as a product manager, I may move to a more waterfall sort of project management style company? What challenges do you think I might face, and what are the key things to consider?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic, because I've spent a lot of time in these companies with my mindset being agile, product. You have to pick your battles. You have to have, if you want to change the mindset, it's going to take time. So you can't come in day one and just say, this is wrong, right? What you can do is, the evidence-based rule applies here. So start showing people the benefit of talking to customers. Start doing guerrilla testing, right? Which means just go around to people in the office and ask them their opinion on something. If they were a user, make a quick wireframe, ask them which one they prefer. Just start to get some of that product thinking mentality into the company. Some companies will be going through a transformation already, in which case you can help them with it. And some companies won't be ready for that transformation. So yeah, I would say just start seeding in the mindset of product, because you can't make a massive, cruise liner change direction overnight. So yeah, just start seeding in those ideas with people of how product works by showing them, not telling them, but actually showing them examples is what I'd recommend there.
Thank you. Damon, how do you overcome challenges around innovating in a highly regulated environment within the finance world? One thing that puts me off working in a fintech is the restrictions and the older ways of working. So it'd be great to hear how you're able to overcome these and truly stay agile within finance.
Sure, that's a really good question as well. It's something that plays on all our minds, especially at Tally. So I guess with something like the Tally as a product, look, FCA are a brilliant organisation. I'll say that politically. They're a brilliant organisation. They're there to regulate and to make sure that consumers' money is protected and put in place specifically after everything that happened during the crash. But some people say that that stops innovation, but I don't actually agree with that. The fintech industry is absolutely booming at the moment, as we all know. And there are innovative products right, left and centre, mostly at the moment harnessing open banking. I don't know if anyone's heard of Snoop, but Snoop launched about 2 Fridays ago. And Snoop is a cracking product that allows you to connect your bank accounts to Snoop, and then they give AI-based recommendations based on your spending behaviour for things like saving on bills and saving on general spending. Based on your behaviour. So that's really innovative, and they're FCA regulated. So I don't think innovation is hampered in any way. And then take Tally, for example, we are completely questioning the whole status quo and saying, well, do you know what? Challenger banks are good, but what about an entirely different challenger currency that completely wipes the floor, we believe, wipes the floor with the pound? You're going up against the Bank of England, basically, which is huge and very bold. We're able to do it. We go under the radar with an e-money license. We don't need to be FCA accredited or FCA approved. And so you go round things, and there's innovation in that itself, because it's not required, because gold is an asset, so it's not seen as currency. Which is bad and good. It's bad because we want it to be seen as a currency, but it's good because it means we can trade and we can carry on. So just in terms of agility, that's an entirely different beast. There's product offering and the FCA and kind of regulation that stops you doing things. But in terms of working as an agile business, you're not hampered by accreditation or by stamps of approval in terms of ways of working. Agile is a ways of working piece that allows you to approach things in a certain way, nicely outlined by Chris. So it doesn't affect our agility. You can still very much innovate in finance, and in fact, the government are very much behind innovation within finance, especially at this time with COVID-19, and what can be done to support businesses and consumers financially. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
I think it did. Well, that's it for questions this week, guys. Just want to say a big thanks to you, Damon, and you, Chris. Really great, 2 really great talks. Thanks to everyone else getting your questions in. We are back next week on Tuesday. So not Monday next week, and then we are every single Tuesday until the end of June. Got some great speakers lined up. Got 2 speakers next week from Receipt Bank. So that'll be a very interesting, again, fintech focused talk again. So yeah, we hope to see you all next week. Just want to let you know that we do find these really important for the community at the moment. I know it's really difficult times for everyone. Things are very quiet for everyone out there in the workplace as well, but there are 1 or 2 companies that are still hiring. So if you are within product and are looking for work, we've got 1 or 2 clients that are still moving and interviewing and onboarding and starting people remotely. So do reach out to myself or Toby Harding or Sina Faramazi, then we're pretty easy to find. You know, we've all got to stick together in these times. So once again, thanks to everyone for joining. Thank you very much to Damon and Chris for your talks. And I hope to see you all again next week. See you later, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye.